Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Jill Gordon. My partner Chris Costa is taking some time away. He's handling a little personal business, as we all have sometime. So we are off and running today with our guest Jill Magee. Jill, thank you for coming on.
Good
and
morning.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Ooh, what I do is always the $1,000,000 question. I do a lot. So my main thing, I'm performance coach. We like to that's a broad box, right?
Right?
I have my degree is in exercise science and coaching, and my experience has been very varied. According to, it's been a good journey. I say I really have enjoyed the journey, and it's ever going.
Good.
I mainly work. I started my work. I wanted to go into strength and conditioning, athletic training, that, and really wanted the NFL. And I say I'm like start to date myself with time, but that was 20 some years ago. So it wasn't super open for females. They've done a wonderful job now, but sports in general was pretty limited as far as a female. Yeah. So back then, so and no, we evolve. So there's no, that's not being said with hate or anything like that. I've had a wonderful experience. But I had to kind of shift my idea of how to get in. And I'm pretty headstrong and stubborn, as everyone that will watch this and knows me personally. I was going to get in. So I went to massage school. That was kind of my thing, which is really funny because I don't like massages. I'm not a spa person. I'm not a sit and relax person at all. So I went to school for that, and then quickly found a passion in the human body even more than what I was doing. So I got in with the Kansas City Chiefs. We were briefly talking about where I'm from, Wisconsin. So really small town. I was lucky enough. And actually, when I set my heart on the NFL, I had no idea that a team came to my school that I was attending. And the Kansas City Chiefs used to have their summer camp up here. So I was able to get in as a camp massage therapist, and then quickly kind of once I got my foot in the door, barged through that pretty hard.
Pushed right on in, huh?
Right on in. They weren't.
That's all right.
Back. So started with that, and then kind of from there, worked for them for 5 years, and was able to develop really good relationships, and then really fall into more of what I wanted to do with athletes, which was movement and development. And I was able to have an amazing group of athletes kind of bring me in and trust me. And I ended up pretty much following, the NFL players around. So it was kind of a thing. So my work, I work a lot all over the place. I always say, like, when you're getting in the career, you're going to be doing a lot of odd jobs, because in 20 years ago, as we know, in the strength and conditioning community, we weren't getting paid a whole lot. So I've done a lot of things. So nervous system work is a lot of the stuff that I do. That's something, a passion of mine. And then through my journey, I went through some things, and that became very, very important. So there's a big component of nervous system work with the strength training, and then all through the years, more recently, now that sports psychology is bringing up, that was part of my degree in college, and being a mother, I think we have an innate ability to work on the mental side.
Sometimes, yes.
And mess with people's brains and get them to do things maybe they don't want to do, but are good for them. So that's something I've kind of always done, and then now working into that, utilizing the mental aspects of that, and then working with the movement. So that's a big mouthful of what I do. There's a lot of certifications in there, and letters and all that stuff that doesn't really, it matters to me as far as supporting the groups that I've learned from. But as far as my identity, I'm kind of we always laugh. I'm just kind of mom. So, but bringing the players along, developing them, and it's just a passion. I get to go to work doing different things with everybody. It's all about the athlete and what they need. So that's kind of the big assessment. It's people find me, and that's how I work. So we just kind of connect and grow. And I have a lot of different things. I have a lot of friends, obviously, in the NFL and MLB. And all over pro sports, which has been a dream. Some days I wake up and I'm like, this is really cool to,
Like,
be able
really?
to do this. Yeah, like I did it and kind of keep going. And I just was at the NFL Combine, and it's funny because I've hit the age, and along with friends of mine, and I was kind of the young pup, thankfully, in my group, and we kind of like we're still here. Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, we're still here. And
Right.
it's my 20th. It's my going into my 20th season, working with players, and I love all sports, and movement, movement. The human brain is incredible. We have amazing capacity to do a lot of things. So
Here's well, first of all, let me touch on something you started off with. Way back when, because I'm not even talking about dating myself, because I go back further than you. Let's just put it that way. But let's be honest. Women, minorities,
yep,
even other professions in the world of strength and conditioning wasn't a big push for that.
yep,
And it wasn't big. I'm not now. This is my profession, and I've loved it since the time I've entered it. So I'm not saying that there were issues. It just wasn't a big push. And part of it was, I think, is that nobody really realized, therefore didn't acknowledge that there was something that was missing.
yep,
Or something different. Why aren't I grew up with sisters who, it's going along that line. I grew up with sisters who played sports,
mm-hmm.
and they played pickup sports with us.
Yep.
So, I didn't have any problem with, as far as females, getting in and competing or doing whatever. My little sister was a outstanding track athlete. Or both my sisters were, but she was, and also a professional bodybuilder.
Yep.
So, to see women in the weight room and doing things like that, and just didn't really shock me. Where for some guys it was like, why are you in here?
I think that, yeah, like you said, is I think a big thing. There's a part of, I work on, and it's not a side thing, but adaptive or inclusion. And I think the more we see, and that's the biggest thing. That's why it's hard sometimes. I don't try to get, now if someone pushes against really super hard just because I'm a female, then I'll take them down. But it's more of a, like, that was my thing. Is I was in sports. I was the only girl at our school really that, went into the weight room. Like, I showed up on a Saturday morning, and that was kind of my start in it. I would say that wasn't I didn't think it was a profession. I didn't know it was a profession until I went to college, actually. And like we say, like, strength and conditioning even has come so far in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't, there wasn't these my parents also were not sports people. They love sports. But like, my mom didn't have an opportunity to play. My dad was a musician, so that wasn't something that he was into, but he did recreation. We were always very active, very, very active. We cross country skied, but as far as them, like, okay, you're going to go to camp for the sport you want to play, like that. My dad was also an accountant, so that wasn't
making sense. That wasn't hitting at all.
We had horses, so I was using all of that fund to have horse. So they were like, "Oh, you want track spikes?" I grew up actually, East Bay Sports. So East Bay was in the town that I grew up, and they built it and sold it. And so, like, it was funny because everyone was like, East Bay, like, it was crazy. I'm like, that was like next door to us. Like, we just went.
Everyday stuff.
Yeah. And then they sold, and
we used to wait for the catalog.
Yeah, and I just go there. So, but I got like the East Bay like bin of spikes, and we had no idea what we were doing. And I think that was all like in a sense an amazing way to play sports because I didn't know better. So and I'm really competitive, so I tried, and I
Say it
want.
isn't so.
Yeah, no, really? That doesn't do anything. Come oozing out of me. But yeah, I was able to go in, like I remember showing up on a Saturday to lifts because I wanted to be faster. And really our only coaches were the football coaches and really props to them. I loved them. They were amazing people, but they didn't know what they were doing at all. They were like the history teacher and they just showed up and were
Right.
coaching, right? They probably played in high school, probably not in college. I don't know totally their story, but I showed up and they were deer in the headlights to like, well, but you're a
Well,
girl, like, what are you here for? And I'm like,
yeah.
well, it's open lift. Like I have to be here. So they were like, go use the ab machine. I had really great abs. So that was,
Yeah.
and then I'm like, okay, I'm really bored with this, but our weight room wasn't set up. We were a smaller school, in my town. And, so we start, like I started then this also dates me, I went to the library and, looked up books cause we had the internet. I always say we had the internet. There just wasn't anything on it.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
you couldn't find anything, but that was a big one was I started learning about movement and I started like lifting and had the book like propped up and lifting and the coaches were like, you're getting pretty good at this. Like, what are you doing? Because they didn't know.
yeah.
And
I mean,
it's cool. Like I was appreciative that maybe they didn't know what they were doing, but they definitely weren't stopping me and they were asking questions along with me and they were interested. And that was how I got the connection then with the football team. And so I was like just one of the guys kind of. And I don't like saying that. Like now that I'm kind of studying like more I don't like saying I'm one of the guys because no, I'm a strong female and I don't need to be one of the guys to be
right.
accepted. But in that instance, when people are like, well, it'll make them uncomfortable to have a female who's, and I was taller and more mature looking and everything than them. And nobody had an issue with me because there wasn't an issue. And I think when we make it an issue, and
Right.
also like I always remind people, I was never asked if I was okay with all male coaches. Like I didn't have a female coach till college.
Right.
And I was never asked if he could stretch me or if that made me uncomfortable. Like nobody cared about my comfort level as a
Yeah.
female girl being stretched by a grown man. It was like, okay, nope, nobody really questioned that. But then it was funny to me, and that was my experience. And then when I started getting kickback from like, it might make the guys uncomfortable if you are working with them. And I'm like, well, then they should get comfortable. I don't like
Yeah.
I get comfortable. I just
I
don't have any sympathy for someone who can't handle like being around another. Now we're not talking about being in the dressing room, like we're not
no.
talking about we're not talking about outside, like you are a professional there. I'm talking about just being in the vicinity. Like then you
Well,
better have stronger minded athletes. Sorry.
I think that athlete also tells a story of what kind of success they have at all levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because our males and females we train together and since you're a track athlete, we were all out on the track together.
Yeah, everyone's together because that was
You
spring
know,
ball. Like now
yeah,
they have spring ball, but like
yeah,
track was spring ball for the guy. We
yeah,
threw football around more than like
yeah,
we didn't do track. We threw football around.
yeah. That was that. I mean, if you played football, you ran track,
Yep.
especially if you were a skill position guy.
Yeah.
But what was funny is like my sister and the crowd she hung out with were all athletes, and you're talking about 2-3 years worth of state championships as a team, 2 or 3 years as a state champion, and just a lot of success because everybody was accepted. Okay, you're an athlete. Here's the weight room.
Yeah.
The weight room at that time happened to be in the boys' locker room.
Yeah. So then it
So
was like,
so
there
you
you
had
go.
to walk through the boys' locker room. So they'd stand at the girls would come to the door,
Yep.
and you knew who it was. You
Yeah.
just go over and open the door, and They'd come through. You wouldn't open the door until everybody was out of the way or whatever.
Yep.
And because it was made to be respectful.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, as I'm sure you experienced some, sometimes there is pushback.
Yep.
And the first time the first time I got pushback was, I was in college and I was helping somebody, and it was a female, one of the athletes,
Mm-hmm.
and I was spotting her or whatever. I don't really know what it was, and somebody said something that was completely out of the way. So it was almost a fisticuffs in the locker room. You know how we get, the egos start to flowing and everything, and I'm like, come on, dude. You know, where are you going? Where are you going with that?
Yep.
And I said something like, "Well, you just spotted Bobby."
Yeah. Yep.
What is the deal? Then he got mad, and so we were growling at each other. You know, it didn't turn out to be much, but that thought process, as of, you know, way back then, we understood why. It was ignorance.
Yeah. Ignorance and insecurity.
And ignorance is one of those things. I don't blame people for ignorance because you haven't been taught better.
Yep.
Stupidity is when you've been taught better, but you choose to do it that way anyway.
Yeah.
So I think when there's pushback today, it leans more towards stupidity.
Yep. I agree.
Because you cannot like it,
Mm-hmm.
but this is what it is.
Well, and it's funny. You look at the, and people I think are out there that just don't want change or don't want, and they don't understand. Like I said, it's just an interesting phenomena as far as not liking it. And I think the biggest thing I want to offer is make sure that people are coming up, and it's good to see like women on the field and stuff like that, and minorities, and they have the coaching programs and stuff like that we can learn. And I think that's a big one. Like I had a lot of experience because I was allowed, kind of like I said, didn't really ask. I just did it. It's kind of been my forte.
That's okay.
Never ask for forgiveness. But I just kind of go in and I want to learn. And that's my biggest thing, is a thirst for learning. And then to go in and into the programs that, like I said, over the years, kind of were like, well, and there is a lot of, I think it's been harder and not in a victim tone, because once again, I feel like there's opportunity to educate, right? Those stupid moments or ignorant moments, I can educate you real well. But those moments where it's been interesting to me, and I've been able to have sit downs with people that are kind of against it. And it's like, what is it really triggering in them that they're against it? And it's, I was very young when I got my position. I would just turn 22. So I understand that I was similar age and whatnot, but very professional. And I think over the years, even, it was always these, because then I switched to private work, right? So I was seeing athletes alone a lot. And it kind of got brought up. We were having a round table with a bunch of people, and I'm like, man, I don't love it, but I love hearing the rumors about my past career, like what has transpired. And I'm like, one is really sad because my brain is totally like, so just like weightlifting and human performance. Like I look at a human body and it's circles and dots and movements.
Right.
And it's like, I just don't really get distracted by, I always say sometimes like the human part of it. Like, oh yeah. Well, I believe it's a person. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, I really love my job. And it's one of those things that it's hard. I think sometimes it's hard for people. And one of the things we said was just because the guys are like, well, if I was in your position, I would totally be, like all, and I'm like, that's you though. That's your guilt of your non-professionalism seeping into mine. It's, that's not my choice. So,
I have primarily worked as a private practitioner in this field since I've been in it. Mm-hmm. I've worked with some teams and whatever. And I owned and operated a women's soccer team.
Mhm.
The coaches did the coaching in that because I couldn't have told
Yeah.
you anything about it. But there were 35 women in the weight room all the time,
Yep.
or at least part of them at some point. And I worked with a lot of female athletes, and I would have parents come in and, well, what about this and what about that? I said, look, come in here, they're athletes.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that's the way they get treated. I said, we don't talk up or down to them.
Yep.
We don't put anybody in compromising situations.
That's
And,
the key. Yep.
and every time that they have a question, they're allowed to ask it out loud or in person, chaperoned, or if they're comfortable, unchaperoned.
Yep.
I said, but the folks that work in here, and I pointed at the males and females that worked with me. I said, they're not thinking about that stuff.
Yeah.
I said, it's professional. And I said, that's the way we conduct ourselves. That's the way we expect it to be treated. And we
athletes too, the athletes can be, that was, I had a conversation the other day. It was, like, well, we have to make sure that all the coaches are being professional. I'm like, well, I want a meeting with the athletes too then. Like, I'm not saying we should definitely have the meeting with the professionals, but that should be something that's drilled into them day one of their schooling. And I'm like, and fireable if you don't act that way, if you don't act like a professional, you're not going to be here. But the athletes too, like, this is especially because I've mainly worked professional. I now have, I have some high school athletes that I worked with, which is always funny because it's like, oh, I don't, it's a different thing. I'm like,
we'll talk about that in a minute.
And like, I've mainly worked with all like adult males, and it's like, yeah, I mean, you're an adult male, like you should be. And that's a big thing now is over the years, I think now everything's out in the open and everyone's so scared. I'm like, you shouldn't be scared if you're not doing stuff.
Right.
Like,
I mean,
let's talk about that. But let's not talk about the fact that you shouldn't have to censor yourself because you should not have to censor yourself. Like, we shouldn't be so worried about, like, if you're that worried about your life coming out, then maybe we need to work on a little bit of,
we got some other problems. Let's just say it for real.
Things than worrying about hiding it. Like, that's, like thinking that it's not going to come out and stuff.
Sometimes I think those individuals that do get into trouble is that they forget they're professionals.
Yes.
Or they forget in college that they're trying to become a professional.
They're becoming a professional. Yep. I have a really amazing college group that I adore, and we're doing full athletic development, and we have roundtables and we talk, and that's number one. I'm like, you are getting a degree, and the want is to get into this next program, which is, they're NFL guys, are going to be, hopefully. But we're setting our goals, but it's amazing to see. And this is where I kind of battle when I talk to people that have been in the profession for so long, I kind of have a fixed mindset on what they can get the athlete to do. I said, I am encouraged highly. These are really good college athletes that are, we're maybe 2 to 3 years out now from one. I have 1 or 2 that are going to be coming up this next, but they are journaling. Really, most of them have willingly given up like any substances and stuff like that. We're working on being a whole person, being a good in relationship, good student. And it's like, that is what has been missing, because we launched these athletes into like, college is using them quite a bit. And I say that with also, like, I think there are amazing programs out there, but I think sometimes all of us get really stuck in patterns of coaching, and then our beliefs on how people can change. And I'm like, well, I have a different approach. I have a little bit of a different approach to, we start with movement, and they really understand that they can move better, feel better. When they get really confident about their movement and feeling better, then all of a sudden their mind is able to relax, and they become this sponge of wanting knowledge. And it's just so cool. Like because I battled that for years. As I get a guy going into their professional, NFL career, and it takes 4 years to get them to get into a routine or understand why and get into it. And then if an injury happens, that's why like I'm so heavy on, and we always are careful to say injury prevention. You can't prevent everything.
Right.
However, I believe if they know where their body is in space and they are recovering correctly, we can reduce majority of the stuff or make it less severe.
Mitigate.
Yeah, we're just in it. So if I can do that for the athlete, we have more time and we get that second contract. And that was always with the NFL, especially, is I don't care what round you go in. I don't care where you go. That second contract gets you
Number 2.
It gets you your insurance for we're talking about life. We're not just talking about obviously Super Bowl ring, but the amount of athletes that get one of those is very few. It's making it to that second contract, and how many first rounders don't make it to a second contract, and
that's
hopefully making it to a second contract so that they can actually be in their business, because they really aren't until they get that second contract. They are just in an internship.
Many guys don't understand that type of thinking. Now, and I'm gonna don't lose your train of thought.
Yep,
but I'm going to let's talk about your approach. Here's mine for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're gonna laugh and you're gonna think I'm making this up, but you can go to my little webpage and you can see it. Movement, energy systems, and management.
Yep.
That's what I focus on.
Yep.
I get questions from like, aren't we gonna lift? Aren't we gonna lift? Well, of course.
Yep.
But you're gonna move first.
Yep.
Because and I start that with the foundations of movement, which are posture and body alignment.
Yes.
So if you walk in looking like something off of Scooby-Doo, walking and your feet are pointing east and west instead of the direction you're going, we're going to talk about it.
Yeah.
Now, I change every anomalous movement? No, sometimes it's not necessary.
Yep.
But it's pretty obviously, and you can tell when there's gross motor movements required, to avoid injury or whatever. Then after that, you're moving easier, you're taking less energy. I segue right into talking to them about and working with them on developing the appropriate energy system for the sport.
Yes.
Because so often that's done wrong. Conditioning is done wrong.
Oh, 100%.
So often. And it's because we don't understand, what the demands and the requirements of the sport are. Mm-hmm. You have to couple that with the demands and the requirements of the individual.
I was just going to say, I'm like, that's the biggest thing we can, yep.
Yeah. And if you don't, or if you make mistakes doing that, and I don't think people, especially in the profession, they don't make mistakes on purpose. Sometimes they just don't pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. It's just not a thing. Okay. We know what the athlete wants to do, but okay, they want to get faster, but they're a 6'6" defensive lineman, and I just need you more explosive within this 8-yard box.
Yep.
I don't need you I don't need you running, a 4.3 40. And then if you already run a 4.3 40, why am I going to lie to you and tell you that I'm going to get you that much faster? Yeah. I'm not. Yep. I just need you to move better.
Exactly.
Because you are getting injured in part due to the way you're moving, and or the ones that don't understand where their body is in time and space.
Yep.
Those are usually college athletes.
Oh, that goes into
it goes into usually college, but I
goes through if they're not corrected, if they're not if they're just naturally good. All of a sudden, I had an awesome I had I always have to tell this story very carefully, because I also, my biggest thing, I don't say the names for the most part of who I work with, because it's not about me.
That's their brand.
it's completely there in that I'm like, and everyone has an opinion on me. So like I said, I might not be very well known in society, but people know who I am, and but it's my whole. It's not about me. It's not about
Oh,
my work is to be the silent partner in their success,
I
and
like it.
means me success because I I
Yep.
get I get paid. I don't need though one of my really good strength coach friends and I always talk like all these people are really willing to put their name on somebody who made it, but like, is that the only person that's come through your door? You
Right.
be able to explain why then there's a person that didn't make it, or
I
and
don't. I
so
have not
I'm
used
not
the.
willing to explain that why that person didn't make it, but I think sometimes people have their own journeys too, and to be only with them on their high and really now I know on social media I put out a lot of my college kids. One, I'm really proud of them, and two, they want it, so I'm like, okay, but I always say to them, once their professional career starts, we're just going to back off of that. They whatever they want to do, but
Well, the technique I used was in college. In the first place, let's just go pros and down. As a
yep,
pro, that's your brand. I don't
yep,
have the right to use your name.
yeah,
And while I was asked a lot, who do you train? Who do you train? Who do you train? Like that really matters.
yeah,
Um, I just tell them that's confidential,
yep.
and by contract.
I have like certain like a lot of the work that I do is actually held under HIPAA, so it's like
Right.
I'm kind
Right.
of I get to legally be like, no,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
cool.
I know. I trust me. I've been down those roads. I've had HIPAA in my office when I had a 9800 square foot building,
Yeah,
and I had HIPAA in my office a couple of times,
and it's like,
but we were okay.
yeah,
But they wanted to see because we were claiming to do,
yep,
post rehabilitation, and we were talking to doctors, and we were doing all kind of stuff. So I welcomed them in there. Hey, come take a look. If we need to be doing something different, please let me know before I get way out of bounds.
be like, it's just not, and we both know there's, so when we know the team system, it could hurt the players. There's people out there that think if the athlete is hiring outside people, that it makes them a selfish athlete, or it makes them somebody that's not going to listen to what the team wants.
I
And that's why I
encourage,
do a lot of team relations and getting them
yeah,
to understand that I have no want to post pictures of this athlete, to post pictures or talk about what the team is doing, because obviously, like, I mean, I'm practically living with my athletes. I'm in there all the time. I'm around their house. I'm going to see a lot, hear a lot, but that's
right.
not something that I have no interest in the politics of anything. I just want to see my athlete. I know I have ADHD, so I jump around. So going back to,
No,
I
you're
don't
fine.
want to let the story go. So back to the sports performance.
Yep.
So I have to be I want to be very careful, but there was an athlete, and I had a group of athletes that I traveled with. And so the night before um, a game, he was like, came up to check it out. He's not my athlete. That's why I'm like, I'm very careful because it's actually not my athlete. But he came to check it out and we hung out with us. And that was always funny because that team, there was a lot of people on there that really didn't like me. And I'm like, your entire team pays for me just to come there. The guys, and giving a little bit of insight. So football, no, baseball is very different. Other sports are very different, but football players have a curfew the night before. They're at the
Right.
hotel the night before home games and away games. So I
Right.
was with them at the hotel in obviously a separate room they got, and there was a lot of people on that team that didn't like that, and I'm like, the other things they could be doing are not preparing them to win. But you're mad at a bunch of athletes. We were sitting around talking about, we were reviewing stuff, and we were talking about dynamics and just like life and stuff like that. And then I would work with everybody. We would do our mobility, and we would connect with our body. They would go to, go curfew, sleep, come back in the morning, and we would really be focused and prepped. I would bring better food because their food were like pizza and chicken wings and ice cream. They had
Yeah.
salad maybe. That's why I'm like, I think what the misconception of what athletes are getting at a pro level. But now,
Yeah.
again, we all know those teams don't win. So the team, like what I was with, but this one of the athletes came up, and this is a very, very well-known athlete, and he's like, well, what are you doing to his feet? I'm like, well, I'm doing some work, like we're getting the feet and hands are proprioceptive, and you guys are so shut
Right.
down that I said we kind of stimulate. It's light touch, or they're rolling out their feet. And he's like, what is that word? And I was like, proprioception. So we were going through, so we had a huge science thing on
Yeah.
proprioception, and he actually wanted it done. So we worked and did some stuff, and then the next day he did a really good job. Because I'm trying to not say, so he did a really good job
Right.
and it was all about his feet. And the next day, the next game, because they went into playoffs then, he came up and he's like, proprioception, man. Like, and I'm like, yeah, I was just going nuts. Like, and I'm like, the feet, like, because that was like, they made the play. And once again, not my athlete, really good person. I was very, very
Um,
busy at the time, but it was cool. Like those moments, I'm like, when I was able to teach him something, he was able to understand how to prepare his body properly, that's what was kind of mind blowing to me as I came into the profession. Number
right.
one, the people I was able to work with the Chiefs, some of my good friends are still there. They are outstanding, by the way, and have a really like. I was able to be really well respected and stuff like that and move up. But like, that's the body knowledge and understanding. It's funny to me how when I got into independence and started working with all these different teams, how like a coach would just flat out be like, nah, like, how are
Yeah.
you denying side? Like, what?
And
Like, we don't want you around. And I'm like, this is funny
the
to me.
biggest thing to me, and we're going to get into a little bit of the psychology of why
Yeah.
that is here in a minute. But the biggest thing to me is how much, and it's not a ding on the athletes or the coaches, but how
No,
much they don't know about the body.
no.
They think they know, and some of them will tell you they know,
Yep.
but what they know is not based in. I'll say most of them
Yeah.
is not based in anything but conjecture and what a
Give you
friend
a
of
fun
mine used to,
history on that. On
what a
my
friend of mine used to call gym science.
Yes. Yep. I was a big
You
gym
know,
science until I actually learned science,
yeah,
and understood it. And I was like, whoa, okay, how the human body works. I went when I was an athlete, and one of the things going into my career was, so like I said, I was really involved in athletics. Like I liked being a good athlete. I wanted to be a better athlete. I like learned as much as I could, but my influence was some books from the library, which is small town library. So
yeah.
there for strength conditioning wasn't much.
Oh,
Um,
trust me.
then Shape magazine, fitness magazine, which I would like tell people to run away from any type of publication, because anybody in there producing something isn't the workout that they're doing, that isn't the nutrition they're doing, the weights and all that, and it just drives me nuts. But so none of that stuff was really. It was all like. Not even bro science. It was totally like, it was totally just like, oh,
Yeah,
here's some chick that lost some weight. And I always laugh. I'm like, I've always had muscular glutes, always. And I kind of laugh because I remember when I was in high school reading so many articles on how to thin your butt. And now it's like complete, like, here's that. And I'm like, I couldn't do it. I was like, the more I work out,
yeah. It's so
that was
it's
why I was fast though. And I was like, well, that was why white girl was fast. Like, and so, but my stuff went to, like, I learned a lot about it. So I was probably more educated, felt more educated, and then went into college. Went to I could have gone to a bigger school for track. I wanted, at the time, I was actually pre-med for, I wanted to do orthopedic rehabilitation and surgery for sport horses. So I was very into the horse
yeah.
world.
That's detailed.
Yeah, so I ended up just going and moving all of that into football players. So I did study movement because the horse can't tell you what, and I had horses and I rehabbed horse. Like I
Right.
heavy into that because, the horses are very expensive and they're always getting hurt. So you have to learn. So I learned a lot. I went to a lot of clinics on movement of the horse, and it was cool because a lot of that stuff started coming over. But as an athlete, I mean, I just wrapped myself in ice all the time. I was super inflamed. My diet was terrible. I'm naturally thin. So to put on any weight or put on anything, I just ate crap, like pretty much, like
Yeah.
and it was
Well,
fun.
there
Yeah.
was there was I was kind of standing around and I was working with a high school, and
Mhm.
I've worked with tens of high schools. But I was at this particular high school, and this kid was talking to his football coach about what to eat
Yep.
because he wanted to gain muscle. Coach said, "Don't worry about it. Just eat everything. Just eat cupcakes and just gain some weight, and you'll get stronger." I'm like, I'm like,
Yeah.
as a professional, I couldn't let that stand.
Yeah.
Well, the football coach got mad at me,
Mhm.
and really, I said, look, coach, I'm not trying to take over your team, but you just gave some horrible advice.
Yep. That could change, that could challenge, because we all know, like, yes, is it, I'm not a big, like, is, if the athlete wants a cupcake, okay,
Yeah.
fine.
So what?
But it's not, but like what I learned with me was, it was funny because my, the conjectures, right? So I, unfortunately, I had an amazing coach that got me into this career, because she was like, because I decided not to go into the vet thing, and she was like, well, you love biomechanics, like, and I'm like, that's a job. Like, that was, to me, it was like, what? Oh yeah, sign me up, like, that's awesome. And I was already like stretching people out, like I was already that person that everybody came
Right.
to. And then, but for myself, I was always in ice. I had a stressful night and missed the carbo loading of our, like before our meet, and which is funny because I'm allergic to wheat. So I was inflaming so much because of eating whole wheat everything. So
Hey,
like all
yeah.
this ice, I'm like, I ice all the time, and my joints would still be inflamed. All this stuff, like, I'd hurt all the time. So I was taking so much ibuprofen because that was the thing. My coach is like, just take ibuprofen. Like
Yeah,
he,
that's not good either.
yeah, and so like I had a really good coach, and then kind of had maybe a coach that I don't see eye to eye with. But he was like, lose weight, that'll get you faster. So I was down weight. I was really skinny, very muscular, but way too skinny. Then I put on weight and started getting faster, weird. But I also, so I missed the dinner, and I ran all PRs the next day. Okay. So here's the deal though. I missed dinner and didn't sleep, and then just like jacked up on sugar before my meet because I was so tired. Um,
Yeah.
so that is what I did for the rest of my career. And weird, I got hurt, right? And then I was inflamed and I couldn't recover. And I was really mad because I was this like top student and nerd in my athletic training class. But when I go to PT, they're like, we don't know why you're not healing. We don't know why. Well, I was in ice all the time. I was taking ibuprofen all the time. I had my ankles were white taped before I ran. So
Right.
like if I could still run fast with my ankles taped, like that's ridiculous as a track athlete. Your ankles,
Yeah.
like,
As a track
that's
athlete.
a hurdler.
Yeah.
And you wonder why though. So I busted my hip because my ankles were done, and I was so hyper flexible. My knee didn't. I sprained my knee, sprained and tore my hip up, and that was it. And everyone just like, you're no longer an athlete. And I was like, but what? Like,
I'm not
okay,
trying to hear that. Yeah.
career. I'm like, I understand my career is done, but like, I want to lift, and this hurts so bad. Like, I can't sleep at night. And they're like, yeah, we don't know what to tell you. Just manage it. And so that was when I started kind of angrily like going, what if I can't rehab myself? Everything I'm learning is going to be a disservice to the athletes that I work with, because
Right.
I will never tell an athlete at any point that they are no longer going to be active the rest
No.
of their life. And I was 20, 21, and so, and like I said, I was really, this all like kind of all meshed together. And that was funny because the only way I was getting in was as a massage therapist. So going then to massage school. I ended up at a really great school. Unfortunately, it's no longer there, but that I got challenged. It was funny. Not trying to, it's just visualization, but I had this little teacher from Korea, and he was really strict, and he was just
Oh
like,
yeah.
he never gave you an answer. So you had like, so he was like, all right, how do we rehab? It was the sports therapy one that I was in the class I was
Yeah,
learning.
I
Like,
I train with some Koreans and a
he's like,
Korean instructor.
he's like, how do you ankle? And of course, like I'm in day class and I'm doing this at night because I just want to get that job, right? So I'm doing
Right.
so many classes. By the way, it was funny. My son was at like, he's in college and he's like, oh, I'm so busy. I'm like, I was like, I was in 2 internships, full-time school. I coached track at my college because I got injured. So I went into coaching, and that was my, double major was coaching. And so it was like, was coaching college track, 2 schools, going to 2 school day and night. And I was pregnant with him and married and all this. And I'm like, and I was, 21, 22 years old.
Oh
So
yeah.
I was like, nope, nobody gets to say that they're stressed out.
But you know what? When you're that age,
You have a boundless energy. So I was
well,
like, yeah,
and you just don't know that you can't do
no,
that.
exactly. And I'm like, and I love my sons, both my kids were brought up in this, so they don't think it's weird or that we travel a lot or anything. But yeah, so I was learning during the day how to, tape an ankle or how to do those things. And I really, once again, I loved the program that I went through. I don't have, it was just very old school science, unfortunately, that they didn't work to update their stuff.
Right.
And then at night I was like, they were like, well, how do you deal with an ankle? And I'm like, gave the answer that I got right on the test earlier that day. And he's like, why? Why would you ice it? And I'm like, because that's the answer. Like that, I passed the test. Don't question me. And I got really defensive with him. And I was like, I'm an A student. And then he just kept asking why, like a 2-year-old. And I finally went home and I went into my book that I had studied supposedly. And I looked at the mechanism of injury repair in the body. How does the body repair itself? And then I was like, at no point does it cool. And like weird, for years, the body has been repairing itself. And so we can give supportive, not saying ice never has a place. I'm a little, I like plunging, and I'm like, no, stop it. Because it's going back to now, like the gyms are like cold plunge after workout. And I'm like, no, we're back to ice after workout. Stop it. So
I'm a believer in ice in certain circumstances.
yeah.
And just like I'm a believer in supportive tape in certain circumstances.
Yep.
But what do you have to be supporting something? There's preventive taping out there, but it's the type of tape you're going to use.
And it's the prevention, because I use kinesiology tape, which is funny because I actually learned in school that was not great. And so I went to prove it wrong, because at this point then I was learning I needed to have my own experience and opinion if I was going to not like something,
Right.
and or say that we shouldn't be using it in a certain space. So I started using it, and then the way that I was using it was like, all right, well, if the body isn't moving correctly, we can give it a cueing, and it will move. It will understand the movement a little bit better, but it's not restrictive. So I'm like, in that instance, that's a really cool way to utilize something without a lot of intervention and not having to actually forcefully change something. And it really kind of proved it to myself. I was wearing it myself with my hip injury, and I was like, did I just run and it didn't get inflamed? That was pretty cool. It was just a strip of tape. But when we understand the skin and the proprioception, like I know all of us, when we're doing an athlete to lift better, like putting a hand on a muscle.
Exactly.
And I'm like, well, I had a javelin thrower, and she's phenomenal. And she had a surgery this before. Now I was her coach, not her performance coach, and then came into being her performance coach. Her parents were like, she was a college athlete. Right. They're like, please help her. So I'm like, well, as long as I had my hand on her trap, in a light manner, she would throw it. And she was a D3 Nationals jav thrower. She was amazing. she would be able to throw it completely fine. But of course, you can't walk up with your athlete when they throw
Right.
it in a competition. And every time she would get nervous, and that goes into the sports psychology and all that stuff, she would, it would come short. And we knew what she was capable of. So I'm like, well, that tape, that person like gave me that tape. And so we just kind of like put a piece of tape on her trap. And then, of course, we moved into like taping the whole system, which was kind of cool. And then everybody was super intimidated by her because they were like, oh my word, she has a trainer, like she has a private trainer and all. That was really funny. The psychology of like, I'm going to jump really quick into another. I coached a baseball team and they did not want, it was a 14-year-old baseball team. They did not want to do their warm-ups. They were like, oh, and I'm like, hey, so I showed the video of the haka, like that
Oh yeah.
intimidates people. And they're like, well, we're not doing that. And I'm like, but if we do this together, do our jumping jacks together, count out together, that's pretty intimidating. And so I'm like, just try it one time with, in front. And we weren't the best team out there. They were, I love all the boys. They're amazing. One of my kid is one of them. But they did it and we won. And the team that we were facing was watching them the whole time we were warming up. And the coach actually came over afterwards. They're like, how did you get them to do that? And I was like, well, we kind of, I'm like, I explained to them that this was going to intimidate you guys and they did it. And then we won. And so they were sold then. This intimidation tactic was actually priming their bodies to play better. But it was in their minds, it was an intimidation thing.
The first time I realized that the psychological part of anything was, let me preface it with this. As a high school football team, we would walk out stone quiet, no noise, no clapping, no jumping up and down, no hoopla, stone quiet, walk out, do all our warm-ups and our exercise, stone quiet. Even the stands started getting quiet when we did it.
That's awesome.
So stone quiet, we'd walk back in after we were done. And then when we came out ready to play, it was different. You know what I mean? Yep. But that was what we did. Mm-hmm. And it was 3 claps when we were finished. 1, 2, 3, bam, gone. Yep. Back, walk back in. And we'd file in walking. We'd file in and file out.
Yep.
Well, I had one of the neighboring towns teams. I was friends with a lot of those guys over there, and here it is. 20 years later, they're saying, "Man, we hated when you guys used to walk out." He said, "You didn't just do it at home; you did it away games, and you would walk out, and everything would get quiet." He said that made us, shake. Why aren't they excited? Why do they do that? So, but that was and I don't know how much thought our coaches put into that, but that was the first time the psychological switch came on in my head.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Yep.
And that was years down the road while I was aware of psychological stuff in sports.
Yep.
The switch didn't really come on until I heard that. And I said, okay, that's a whole different, demeanor or a whole different meaning of what I was using the psychology for. So,
well, and that worked with that team. I think there's so many things that, and now in different ways that can work with, that could be the legacy. And like, you get excited about that. There's a team that is in Wisconsin here, Kimberly football. They are an amazing program. And really the coaches, the heart they have, and it's just done right. But they teach the kids, it's servant mindset, right? So
I love it.
They serve the freshmen, and it's funny now, or not funny, but like, it's amazing to see the legacy in these colleges. So even if they're not the best player, the colleges are going, we want those kids. And that's what I get frustrated. Unfortunately, there's a few teams that I deal with around here that are just very about themselves and about, like the people are very egocentric, and it's like, let's do, it's more and more about the star athlete and supporting the star athlete. And it's like, actually it's that star athlete could go out and then you're going to lose the game. Now, I'm not a big, like, winning isn't everything to me. it's really fun. It's awesome. A winning program is really great. Everybody wants to be a part of it. But I think a lot of times, like when I get them right in the pros, if they've been part of a winning team that's egocentric, it's very, very hard for them to understand what the NFL is about, because the
Right.
NFL isn't about you. Um, they might
At all.
they might pretend like it is. It isn't. You better
But
be coach's X. You could be the fastest guy out there. If you don't do what that coach wants you to do, and I won't talk politics,
right.
but there's
No, I got you.
amazing players that the coaches just were like, it's not my style. I'm not going to play them. And it's like, but that's
Yeah.
so and so. And it's like, well, that's not my style. And I've observed teams that the coaching staff has won Super Bowls, and they get this different team of athletes. And then it's, like I said, same thing is, I would love to see a little bit more really understanding your team. But yeah, the
Right.
NFL is not about you. Like,
No,
you
if
make
this
college all
it's
you want, but like, you are not, it is not about, you have to be. That was one of the cool talks we had one of the nights that we were all together, and the older guys were mentoring some of the younger guys, and they're like, man, just be on your X. Be on your X. You can question it later, but you have, for the first 2 years of your career, be on your X. Don't do anything different than that, what that coach says, because your failure is his failure then. But if you weren't on your X, you're gone.
yeah, and
So,
that's the same way going from high school to college,
yep.
realizing that okay, I'm the superstar,
Mm-hmm.
but everybody that just showed up to camp was a superstar at this level too.
So learning that. So I love when high schools really teach this, like, really great, and then having that bond, right? Like you said, the bond was everybody did it, and everybody was supported, and everybody did that ritual routine. And I'm sure that was partly, the athletes were good with that. And it was cool. I think those type of things. I love asking when a team wins a Super Bowl. I get opportunities to ask people within the organizations, like, what was it? What was it when you knew? Because and I've been with teams that you just knew it was something very special, and
Right.
maybe they didn't go win the Super Bowl, but that was a special, special time. And it was cool because that's where you're like, everyone's like, what creates a winning team? And like, culture is a big one. Like, your building, who are you around? Your fans, are you feeding into the people around you?
And it goes so
So deep.
deep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So it's what are you doing? And that athlete is an employee. They're not, they're partly, they're the product. They're selling the product. So the team, like, really serving that, like, creating them, they're the salesperson to the product, right?
Right.
So for a company. And it's so funny because it's like, that's where I think we kind of get it wrong, as sometimes in coaching high school and college, is that we're really big on, they're the product, and we need to, like, promote the product, which that means very self-centered, very, like, they haven't had any failure. And
Right.
that's big.
And they're not allowed to fail.
They're not allowed to fail. And then they get to a place where, like, failure will happen, and
It's
failure is
imminent. Yeah. Failure is imminent.
growth. And it's, so, like, one of the notes I had is adaptability, right? So, like, real success, athletes are able to adapt, and you see the greats. And, like I said, I love studying the greats. I also love studying the busts, because it's like, what was wrong with them? What happened? And it was adaptability. It was they were who they were, and they could not adapt. They could not
Right.
change.
There's a lot of male and female
Mhm,
superstar athletes, highly skilled, physically gifted athletes
mhm.
that are working in different professions now.
Yeah.
And none of those professions are bad.
Well, everyone's like, well,
But
they're overly emotional or something. I'm like, that's not it. I love when my guys get emotional about their work. That's amazing. That's
yeah,
incredible. But it's the adaptability with that emotion, or that's what's happening. And I think, and coaching too, right? Like we both said, like, our upbringing, we were able to adapt to what was around us. And that's what
well,
created our careers. And I can change my mind. which is awesome.
Yeah.
Like it's okay. I think that's what we struggle with in the strength and conditioning community, is this idea that what the book says is, oh, my light is being weird. Sorry, I'm just gonna take that out. What the book says is like, we have to stand on that mountain. Like I always say, like, I had protocols that I've used. And then now we have really cool ideas or things that could change that a little bit, right? We don't have to be, I was like, in not dog and ice thing at all.
Right.
But I love, like, so the rest, ice, compression, elevation, we unfortunately still use that all the time. The guy who created that, which I'm going to fail on his name, but he actually wrote an amazing article supporting with new evidence that isn't really what we should be doing. We should be letting the natural process happen a little bit more, even in acute, unless it's going to be something where it's an acute injury, spinal cord, or something that would cut off the circulation. Then we need to cool it down to stop the inflammation. Right. But those are in acute settings. And so even at post-surgery, I'm not a PT, I manage people. So getting arnica on arnica is a topical that helps stuff like that. So it's just supporting the body. But that's the thing, is I always laugh, like, I always know the people that really aren't adaptable because they're holding on to something that it's like, hey, could we just look at the new science? We don't have to jump on the new thing, because I still use Epsom salts, and everyone's like, you're so archaic. And I'm like, actually, the new studies say that Epsom salts work really well. So I've been using them.
So here's something that I know a lot of people say, but I've said it a lot too.
Yeah.
But Mother Nature and Father Time are undefeated.
Yes.
They are undefeated. However, there's another player in that game as well that's undefeated. Change.
Yep.
Change is coming. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you want.
Yep.
What you think, how you do things, change is coming. Mm-hmm. And you either adapt and flow with that change, or you don't, and you get ran over by change.
Yes.
Because that's what we've learned in my number of years more than yours about change. It's going to happen. It's going to. It doesn't. You can be on top of the science and on the tip of the spear, mm-hmm. and then something's going to change it up.
Yep.
It's like. After having a surgery, stay off of it for 2 weeks and rest. Now it's get up the same day and start moving around. Mm-hmm. So what's better? Don't know. Yeah.
And that's where it's awesome. I think when we teach coaches at a level to, I love common sense, which is funny because I understand common sense isn't that common.
Right. There you go.
We can look at the person, like, what is that person struggling with, and what is the and once again, I'm not in any way diagnosing people or anything like that. I'm just there to support the athlete through periods of time, and I'm the one at home with them. So we can look at the athlete though, like me, when my entire, from 14 years old or earlier, I took ibuprofen at the slightest inflammatory response. Right. So it took me about 2 years to not be able to take a little bit, because my body was so used to over-inflaming because it wasn't getting what it needed because I was shutting that system down. Right. So when I'm asking an athlete, so if I get an athlete, say, when they're in their career, they're very used to taking things like Toradol and things like that to not feel their body in
right.
space. And so that's my thing, is I want you to feel everything, because your body can then process it, and then you're not and I'm just talking strictly football, or like pro football, then on Monday you don't hurt. And right. So a lot of my athletes, and this is why I'm so excited about kind of getting more into the college setting with some of these athletes, because I can teach this prior to them going into their actual right. job. But typically it's about 2 years, and I'm like, I'll work with you 2 seasons. And in those 2 seasons, we're going to work on not doing anything outside of ourselves to numb ourselves. So we need to go in, because if you're in so much pain that you can't go in and lift what you're supposed to lift, then we need to listen to the body, and we can do
Right.
a lot of different things. Like you said, like,
Yeah.
okay, today then isn't the day to push it. We can change the plan. We can adapt. This is where everybody's like, can you make me up a plan? And I'm like, I can map out something for you, but unfortunately you have a life, you have stuff that's going to happen. And I want to every week be in charge. So like, it's not as easy as just like, go get a plan. I mean, it's amazing. We have these great, cool tools that I'm like, anybody can start a yoga routine. Anybody start a strength routine. We have the most information out there, but we have to understand that information is still limited on, we aren't thinking about the human doing it. And I know, like, a stressful day, that isn't the time to go and break down your body. We need to build it up. So is the workout that you're going to do, and this is why I have a hard time with adult training, because it's this idea that you need to beat down your body to put it into a shape that is conventional. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of days that you shouldn't be lifting, because that's actually going to create an issue in which you're not going to be able to build this body that you want to get. So,
the beat down, that's what I used to call it. You can't beat your body down every day and expect it to respond the way, because it's going to respond to what you're doing to it, every day.
They're short term, right? We've all seen the athletes. I mean, you look at the athletes, and this is what's sad to me. When I started really being in the industry, and these athletes are now people that I care about deeply, right? It went from like, they're an athlete, I'm the coach, to people that I'm like, I want them to be able to play. I had an athlete once that came to me, and I was like, I just don't think, and once again, this is working with the team and working with the system. It wasn't going to be terrible. I was like, I just don't know if you're ready to play this game. Like, it just feels to me like your body's really not secure with itself yet. And this is something, it was a preseason game, by the way, so it wasn't messing up anything.
Right.
And they were just going to have him play. And it's like, is that really a good decision for you? And you need to talk to the team about this decision. And he's like, well, Jill, just fix it. I'll go play. I don't need my arm in, because he was at the end of his career. He's like, I don't need my arm in a year. And I'm like, you have like 2 boys and a daughter that deserve to have your arm.
You're gonna want that.
And I'm like,
when
man,
time comes.
it's funny because, of course, at that time I was younger than him, right? So I was very early in my career. He was a veteran, and now being even older and being at the age of like, couldn't play in the NFL anymore. I'm like, I would hate to wake up and not be able to use something because of a short term thing. Right now, I understand it was a preseason game, but not going to a game is a lot more money than I could even fathom. For most athletes. So I do make sure that they can do their career, but always not, like this, a lot of our things, unfortunately, like the substances like HGH or steroid. Right. Unfortunately, I think there's a lot of coaches out there that don't know what they're doing. So I would say, like, no 14-year-old is going on the internet and buying this stuff, and there's somebody involved.
Somebody's supplying it.
Be able to hide it. There's really somebody involved. So to me, that needs to fall on the coaching industry hard. Like, really hard. We discipline the athlete, but because I know coaches and they're bad coaches, and I'll say that, like,
they're out there.
They do not know how to recover the athlete correctly. And that's all that these substances do. It recovers you quicker. Yeah. It takes years off your life. It enlarges your heart. It makes, you will die early for what? And that bothers me, because there is a really great way to play a sport. Same thing with head injury. We can recover it in a way that it won't leave lasting damage. We can prepare the body in a way that there's not inflammation in the brain. We found out there's a separate lymphatic system of the brain. We can work with that. So you can go in and play football and absolutely come out of it not messed up or not depressed or not having severe issues. But we need to bring that in and be smarter and bring it in and force that in, and not just worry about like, well, that athlete has to be on the field because it serves this purpose that's, kind of dumb. So,
Right.
but it's a conversation. It's a, like I said, if I can make sure that athlete's recovered, but the more I can get them to feel their body, the more they understand that system. Like, hey, no, I'm really not okay today. Or like, yeah, I'm good to go in. There might be some things. One of my athletes once said to me, they're like, I feel every hit on the field now. And he was one that went in quite like blank. And I'm
Right.
like, he goes, but my performance gone up and I don't hurt on Monday. And I'm like, yep, because your body's actually able to make conscious decisions. You're able to reset whenever. So I have things that they do to reset their body on the sideline. So look at boxers, and I understand head injury stuff with boxers, but they jump rope. So I have a lot of my athletes jumping rope. The up and down movements help with dopamine. So with a lot of athletes have ADHD or some, like those type of things, that actually helps with dopamine quite a bit. You can do some proprioceptive work, shoulder rolls. So my
Right.
safeties that go in and hit, what's happening a lot of times is their body's starting to protect themselves. So even with pads on,
Yeah.
you don't see it.
Yeah.
So you know this with proprioception. So if they can come off the field
We
and
used
just,
to use the term guarding.
yep. So they guard. So it's like, well, they start to then hit here, which you want to hit through here, right? For a safe
Right.
hit. They start to hit through here, get stingers. But if they can come off and psychologically reset, or physically and psychologically reset their body and reset and go back in, or even on the field as they're in plays, if they can be aware of where their body is in space, it saves a lot of that stuff that would be, it's like, well, we can teach them how to hit good, the repetition of hitting, but if they actually aren't thinking about it, which the more you think about it,
Which they shouldn't.
But the more we can practice that, it becomes
Practice is different.
so they can feel their body without having to be aware. So like when I go for a run, because of my injuries over, and then why I'm very big into the nervous system, I had a bout with Bell's palsy because of a Lyme disease. So I went through where half my body was paralyzed. Like I couldn't move it. So bringing that back. So the awareness of the body, the awareness of space, relearning proprioception, really highlighted that into my work as well, because like I went from not being able to feel anything to having to like get those receptors back and stuff like that, and being able to trust my body. And I think a lot of times the athletes start dealing with that, where it's like they start you can see it too, like towards the end of the season, shortened steps with the receivers, and so misses happen because that quarterback and receiver. So we can keep them on par if they understand their body. And so educating them.
And learn how to listen to it.
Yes,
Learn how
listen.
to listen to your body. Yeah.
The biggest thing is it will tell you. And so that's what, like, I use workouts. So like it could be the same program as other people use, but how you do it, how you're listening to your body on that rep, how you're like, okay, what is this set feeling different than the next?
Yeah.
Am I jumping? And those are where we start to it's a communication. So lifting isn't just, now I love like grind hard. Like I'm a big, like work hard, like take your body to where you don't think you could go. Like, let's do it, but also understand you have to communicate with the body. Any relationship is communication.
Asking yourself, how did that feel?
Yep.
Is always important. Now, I'm going to stop you, not because I want to.
It's all good. I know. I just looked at the time.
But because the production folks will get mad at me if I don't.
No worries.
But I ain't worried about them. That's why I let it just keep going, because we had some good stuff going on.
We did.
We're going to invite you back. Just
awesome.
Because I think we got 900,000 more subjects. Yep. So we're going to do that. Mm-hmm. It's been great having you on the show. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your enthusiasm, and we definitely need to talk some more.
Yes, I'd love that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Performance Talk, and we have been with Jill Magee today. It's been a great conversation. And once again, Jill, thank you.
Thank you.
And we are out.